Now we'll be solving the substring count problem, and it states that given a string and a non-empty substring, compute recursively the number of times that the substring appears in the string without the substrings overlapping. And we can see that substring count has the following parameters where str is the string and substring is also a string. But more specifically, substring is the string for which we're trying to find how many times does this occur in str without each occurrence overlapping. So if we take a look at sample case 0, we can see that for when str is cat, cow, cat, and the substring is cat, well, cat appears twice in cat, cow, cat, and the two occurrences do not overlap. And if we take a look at sample case 1, we can see that for cat, cow, cat, and dog, well, dog doesn't appear in cat, cow, cat, so we know that the output should be 0. Well, there's another case that I want to consider, which is something like, let's say that str was AAAA, and the substring was AAA. Well, what would you expect the output to be? Would it be 2 because AAA here's one occurrence and then AAA here's another occurrence? Well, no, because both of those occurrences would be overlapping. So the expected output in this case should be 1. So how are we going to handle that? Well, the first thing we want to do when we approach a recursive problem is we want to determine what is our base case. Well, what do we know if the length of str is less than the length of substring? Well, we know that if the length of str is less than the length of the substring, we know that there's no way that substring can occur in str. There's just no way. Like, what if we have the empty string as str and our substring is hello world? Well, hello world never occurs in str. So we can just return 0 in this case. So that will be our base case. Well, what do we know in this else statement? We know that str, the string str, is at least as long as the length of the substring. So what we can do is we can check. Let's say substring has length 3, like in our example, cat. And in this case, str is cat, cow, cat. Well, what we can do is we can check for the first 3 characters in str, we can see, does it match cat? Because cat is length 3, that is why. So what we're going to do is, if str and we slice it until the length of the substring, so we're checking for the first however many characters long substring is in str, does this thing match substring? And if it does, we know that, well, substring occurred at least once. But do we know how many times it occurred total? Well, we don't, which is why we're going to recursively call substring count. And what are we going to pass into substring count? Well, we know we're going to pass the substring in, but what are we going to pass in first? We're going to pass in the rest of str starting at the length of the substring. So we're going to do str slicing from the length of the substring onward and substring. What is the reasoning here? Well, the reason why we do that is because we want to, in this case, let's say cat matched cat right here. So we know it occurred once, but we need to look at the rest of the string, ignoring cat. So we need to look at the rest of the string, which means cow, cat. And the way we do that is we slice starting from here, this index from this C, and we do that by doing str, the length of the substring. Well, let's say that, like in the second example, dog never appeared in cat, and it didn't match the first 3 characters, right? Well, just because it didn't match the first 3 characters doesn't mean that dog necessarily isn't going to match ATC. So what we're going to do here instead is we're just going to return substring count, but we're going to slice from 1 instead and then substring. The reasoning here is, like I mentioned before, just because the substring didn't happen to match the first however many characters long substring is in str doesn't mean that we should just move on and start looking at cow, cat. Yes, so that is the reason why we're going to start looking at 1 instead of length of substring. There is a scenario in which, let's say that instead of it being CAT, it was CDOG. Well, if we had started from cow, cat instead, or whatever that would have been, then we would have missed that occurrence. So we know that we have to start at 1 instead. So if we try running this code, we can see that our output matches the expected output, and if we run our code against all of the test cases, whenever test case 0 decides to finish, we can see that all available test cases have passed. So we're going to click submit code and move on to the next problem.